Hi everyone, my name is Jade Forrester. I'm the Marketing Communications Officer here at Mentor UK, and thank you for joining us for the second Kinship Care Week webinar, which is a day in the life of a kinship carer, which will be looking at the struggles and triumphs of kinship care families in the UK. I'm going to give a brief introduction, introduce you to Mentor and the work we do with kinship carers, and also a little bit about what this week is all about and why we are leading Kinship Care Week. And then I'm going to play a short video testimonial from a kinship carer who very kindly offered to share her story as part of Kinship Care Week in the hope that it might help other kinship carers and provide some insight into another person's experience. So if you just bear with me, I'm going to get my presentation up and ready, and then I will share my screen and start that for you. Okay, here we are. So as I said, on today's webinar, I will introduce Mentor and Kinship Care Week. We will hear Francis's story and explore in a bit more depth what kinship carers' needs are. Then I will also open up the webinar to any other carers who may have joined us on this webinar, or those who may be joining us live on Twitter. You can contribute to the conversation using the hashtag, which you can see here, hashtag Kinship Care Week. So I'll be monitoring that through the webinar. So if you have any comments, thoughts, questions about this webinar or anything else that we talk about, just tweet using that hashtag and I will do my best to answer your questions. Okay, so Mentor. Our mission is twofold. It's to promote the health and well-being of children and young people and to prevent drug and alcohol misuse. And how we do this is by developing young people's life skills that build resilience to risk. And there are three main areas of our work. So we have our research branch, which is about building our evidence base and making sure everything we do can be held against the highest available research evidence. We have our programs, which is our direct delivery, either with young people themselves or with their families, their schools, or other community settings. And then we also have our policy work, and that involves working with government, commissioners, and other influencers to make sure that children and young people are best cared for at a policy level. Now, to base our work firmly in evidence, we launched Mentor Adepis. This launched back in 2013 as a platform for sharing evidence-based resources and information with schools and other practitioners working in alcohol and drug education and prevention. It's widely acknowledged as a leading source of evidence-based resources, and even this year was recognized at an international level by UNESCO as a shining example of evidence-based practice. So enough about Mentor and more into what kinship care is. So very briefly, kinship care is an arrangement for a family member or close friend to look after children whose parents are unable to look after them. To bring more attention to kinship care families, Mentor launched Kinship Care Week. We've got lots of events and activities happening all week, and on Sunday it will conclude with a BBC Radio 4 charity appeal broadcast by Baroness Susan Greenfield, who is a Mentor ambassador. During this week, we aim to recognise and celebrate the work of kinship carers, raise the profile of kinship care in the community, and also promote best practice among kinship care professionals. Anyone who attended our other Kinship Care Week webinar will have seen that we are also hoping to support professionals who work with kinship care families to make sure that they know and can support the families that they're working with. So as a drug and alcohol prevention charity, we're often asked, why are you working with kinship care families? And this is what we tell them. The most common reason for children entering kinship care is through parental drug and alcohol misuse. That's about 2/3 or 67% of children in kinship care are there because of substance misuse and other related issues. We know that parental substance misuse has a massive impact on children. We know that the children of alcoholics are 4 times more likely to become addicted to alcohol, and they're at a much higher risk for drug problems later in life than the rest of the population. Naturally, this impacts their physical, psychological, and emotional well-being and can prevent them thriving, which is where we like to come in, help support these families, and really do our best to make sure that the children in kinship care are thriving. Now, since 2004, we've worked with hundreds of kinship carers across Scotland and England, and we provide personalised support, information and advice, as well as peer group opportunities for kinship carers and the young people in their care. These services improve family relationships, can build confidence among carers, and can help these families be more positively integrated within their local community. So this helps with not just the well-being of the children, but of the carers themselves, who are doing such an important role. Now, we know from our experience and from research that kinship carers play a vital role in keeping children safe from drugs and alcohol and from other harms. Carers' attitudes and behaviours can help shape a young person's views and can help keep them safe. It can help by modelling behaviour that you want your young person to follow, or by speaking about your boundaries. There are many ways that carers help shape a young person's views as they grow up and start facing more and more complicated aspects of life. So why are we here today? Why are we having these webinars about kinship care? Well, a recent study found that 77% of kinship carers have asked for professional support in the process of becoming a carer, but only about a third of them get the help that they need. Now, it seems obvious to us that these figures need to be greatly improved so that either of carers are asking for support because they've already been given it before they know they need it, and that those who do ask are given it as quickly as possible. So we need to be thinking about how we can support kinship carers and a range of different needs. And that ranges from the practical, the emotional, and the financial. Now, I would love to keep talking to you about these. I think it's best when it comes from a carer themselves. So I'm now going to go over to the video of Frances, and we're going to hear what she has to say about her experience as a kinship carer.
It's useful for you just to find out about somebody else's experience. I became a carer for 2 children 1 year ago, and it has been the biggest challenge of my life. I think it was a struggle on 2 levels to start with. Firstly, just on the emotional side and looking after children's side, it was a massive leap and challenge for myself and my husband. We don't have any children of our own, and we have no experience of looking after children. So it has been a spectacular learning curve, just even learning about how to look after a child, never mind having the added extra of 2 children that obviously had come from a very difficult background and were in very, very emotional circumstances. The children were 7 and 9 when they came to live with us, and it became apparent that they had a lot of behavioural issues. The background that they'd been living in obviously had created a lot of problems for them. They emotionally were not acting their age at all. What happened to the elder child was that they had been forced into a caring role because they had been looking after their mum in the house. They were really acting more like teenage behaviour. The younger one had shut herself off and completely regressed emotionally, so she was acting more like a 4-year-old would expect to be kind of emotionally. They had a lot of behavioural problems. They didn't understand boundaries, structures, routine, didn't understand why you go to school, didn't understand that you go to school 5 days a week, didn't understand why you have to eat good food, didn't understand how to tidy up after yourself. Any kind of basic level of parenting just hadn't been there. We also didn't know the children, and they didn't know us, so it was a wee bit of a unique kinship care situation in that we kind of fell between a gap of being like foster carers but without any training or support, and only really trying to help the children understand that link to us through explaining how in the family we were related to them. As well as obviously the emotional and behavioural issues that we had with the children, there was a massive practical struggle for me and my husband to go from two people who lived a normal life, worked in jobs, ran a house, had their own hobbies, and we had to then cope with double the amount of cleaning, shopping, cooking, picking up children from school. We just, it was like a bombshell overnight because we took the children in an emergency situation. So between us saying to social workers that we might be able to offer them a home, to them actually being in our house, only had a period of literally a week. So we had to turn over getting a bedroom organised, and just the practical volume of stuff we had to get. We had to get clothes and toys and things, everything from scratch. So there was a massive practical kind of learning curve there, just in looking after them. The biggest triumphs are there's the small things that make you feel like you have won a marathon. When a child who wouldn't even go to school and didn't understand why they had to go to school now knows how to get up in the morning, how to put on a school uniform, how to have breakfast, how to brush your teeth, how to pack a school bag, and how to get out to school on time. That is incredible. You take for granted, I suppose it's made me appreciate my parenting and the background that I came from, because you take for granted the life skills that your parents teach you from a very, very early age, of all those little things, how to brush your teeth, how to brush your hair, how to just tiny little things that you do around your house that is actually a massive life lesson. All the behavioural issues that the girls came with have gone. I am not a professional, as I say, I had no experience of looking after children. We have a really good family support network, and we have a really good understanding of what it means to love a child. Love, support, boundaries, perseverance, open conversation, letting those children have a normal, boring, bog standard, middle of the road life. We have behaviour entirely. Some of the girls actually, the children were actually working with professionals for years, counsellors, people who couldn't get them to talk, couldn't turn around their behaviour. Not that I'm saying those things aren't important, but what they needed was what we were able to offer them, and you don't realise that at the time, because you think, can I do this? Do I have the experience? Do I have the knowledge? Will I do any damage to these children further, because I don't understand psychology and social work and sociology and all these fancy terms, but I know what it means to be part of a loving family, and that was the most important thing that they needed. the biggest lesson that I've learned from becoming a kinship carer is that you know more than you think you know. Trust your gut instinct. You are going to make so many mistakes. You are going to have to persevere and keep with trial and error for the things that you do as you learn how to work with these children. I quickly learned that I think what would be my natural parenting style didn't work with these kids, so I had to really try and teach myself a different way because they didn't understand the boundaries between children and adults. And I found that quite challenging because I kind of come from a world where if your mom tells you to do something, then you do it. And they just didn't understand why this adult was asking them to do something that they should do it. So trying to help them understand, why do you need to go to sleep just now? Why is it really important that your body gets rest? Why is it really important that you get to school and you learn and the bigger picture? And if they could make connections, it helped them to understand. I found that really challenging because it's not the way I would normally expect to speak to a child, but you have to realise that they hadn't been treated like children, so they needed a different level of understanding. My relationship with my husband has changed a lot, and it's a massive thing to undertake, and it's a massive risk that you take because you don't know how you're going to work together looking after children until you actually do it. And thankfully we are proven to be a really, really good team. But that can be really challenging as well, and you've got to make sure that you remember to look after yourself and your own relationship as well, and not let this new responsibility take over your whole life and your whole emotions and your marriage and your house. The children have adapted spectacularly well. I am amazed at the resilience of children. I knew nothing about children. I have no milestones or markers, but I cannot believe that they are the same children that came to stay with us. They are happy. They are behaving like normal children. They're doing really well at school. They are just, I'm so proud of them and what they've achieved, and I'm so proud of my part in that. And they also now understand what a normal life looks like, which is something that they didn't know what that was like before. I'm just going to talk to you a little bit now about the support that we have received as kinship carers. Again, we're in a kind of different situation that the local authority that the children are looked after children in is a different one to the one we live in. There's quite a large distance between them. So although we have had support, if you like, from that local authority, the main kind of access to services and things is in a different place. We found it quite challenging to actually access support. First point of call was obviously the finances, because very expensive to look after children, and we had obviously been informed that as kinship carers we were entitled to kinship support. The public sector obviously can be quite challenging to negotiate the paperwork, the red tape that needs done. Be prepared to have your part in that and to chase and persevere. It took me 5 months to get us the financial support that we were entitled to. I think, again, because everything has happened so quickly for us, the paperwork took a long time to fall into place afterwards. We were backdated, obviously, support that we were entitled to, but I have to say, if we hadn't been in a position with our own personal savings, we wouldn't have been able to financially look after the children. Luckily we were, but obviously it wasn't ideal. We now receive a kinship allowance for both children, and that is obviously helping us to pay for their food. They never stop eating, and to allow them access to fun social events, clothes, all the things that you need. And we haven't had to change our working situation to be able to support them, which is great. We also received local support in our area of access to free sports and issues in the local authority too. So that's been really useful. We've managed to get the kids free swimming, access to the libraries, and they'll get able to get free swimming lessons, etc. And as carers as well, we also have access to our gyms and our local community and everything for free, which is fabulous. We don't know any other kinship families. I have never ever met another kinship carer. I tried to reach out to social media for that, just to help, to join some Facebook groups and things, but I think for me the kind of strangest part was that a lot of the time kinship carers are grandparents or aunties and uncles, and relate to that. I actually had tried to join some kinship charities and found it quite off-putting, because even the language that was used throughout their support actually said grandparents. I just thought, this isn't me. And also, I guess, us trying to establish an emotional connection with those children from the get-go was really challenging, whereas kinship carers can very often have that already, because they know the children well and they love the children, and they have a prior relationship with them that we didn't have. I would love to connect with anybody that is obviously interested in sharing their experiences and letting people know that no matter how unique your situation, you're not alone in the way that you might be feeling. My words of support or advice to new kinship carers. I guess what I'd said earlier on, just trust your own gut instinct that you have the ability to do something, and also make sure that you are able to yourself. And the extra part I think about kinship care is that you need to remember how to keep yourself from getting involved in that huge dynamic, because as a kinship carer you are taking over your whole family. Obviously foster carer is between you and a local authority and a child, whereas this extra dynamic of taking on your family's politics, the emotions, everything that happens with that, be prepared to try and get an objective hat on there. I think that's been helped by my husband, because he's not, obviously it's my biological family, and he has more objectivity, which can help me sometimes to not get involved in that and keep yourself with the current sort of situation. What do I wish people knew about kinship care? What it was. People ask, transition and you trying to say you're a kinship carer is nothing. People foster care just to make, I opened my eyes to whole world of people who are kinship carers, and also for a while fulfilling a place in society that really supports children and local authorities. I'm interested in sharing experiences with other kinship carers.
Well, that was Frances Rowan. I'm just going to bring us back here. So I don't know about you guys, but that story is so powerful to me. Frances is not, as she acknowledges, the typical kinship carer that a lot of kinship care organizations are set up to support. She said she felt some alienation from the sort of grandparent carer community, but she, despite not having a close relationship with the children, took them in and was able to care for them and help them push through a lot of their behavioral and emotional issues that they were struggling with. When I was preparing for this webinar, I was tearing up a bit preparing that video. That video will be and is available on our YouTube video for anyone who wants to watch it again or share it. Frances is also on Twitter. That was how she found us. And as she said, she is looking to connect with other kinship carers if they want to share their experiences. So feel free to find her there as well. I'm going to share my screen again and bring the presentation back up just to go through a few more of the points that we've gleaned from Frances's story and other kinship carers who we've worked with over the years. So just bear with me while I share my screen again. Okay, so Frances, in her testimonial, really went into great detail about some of the practical, emotional, and financial obstacles that can be put in a carer's way when they take on the care of someone else's children. So first, we're going to dig into some of the practical needs that carers face. So ranging from knowledge about the child's issues. In Frances's case, that was that the children's mother had problems with alcohol and drug addiction. Other reasons for children going into kinship care could be neglect or abuse, could be bereavement, the loss of a parent, or an illness or severe injury. So any carer that takes on the care of another's children has to be knowledgeable about the situation that they've come from in order to talk to the children about what their family is going through. 53% of kinship carers have health problems of their own in the long term. So there can also be that element of a practical need for support, that if they themselves aren't in full fitness, if they are older or if they have their own illness, they need extra support there as well. Education and training can also be a really crucial part of a carer's support system. Again, whether that's about a specific issue that the child is facing, such as a behavioral issue, or if they have special educational needs. Education and training services and the availability of these are invaluable. As Frances said, the public sector can be tricky to navigate, and the paperwork can be daunting. So even just the practicalities of taking on the care of someone else's children can be really intimidating. And so as much as we can, we hope to support carers who are going through this process to make sure that they know where to go for help and that they get the support they need. Moving on down this list here, we've also got things like needing peer and one-to-one support, and that's not just for the children, but for the carers themselves, as well as helplines and a point of contact, whether that's someone from a local charity or the local authority, the family and care department. These people can be really key to helping a family get through the more difficult times. And there's also plenty of other resources and further information. Each family has its own unique set of needs and struggles and accomplishments, and to be able to access the resources they need is really important to help the family thrive as a whole. On the emotional side then, speaking from part of the third sector and the professional community that hopes to support more kinship carers, we always try to approach a kinship care situation with empathy with a gentle attitude, but also with plenty of encouragement and positivity. Our goal is always to reassure a carer that they're not alone, that they're not to blame for the situation, and that the child is not to blame for the situation, and to make sure that they know they can make a positive difference in the life of the child. Now, Francis's story really clearly illustrated that, that despite not having children of their own, no experience raising children, that they managed to help guide Francis's cousins' daughters through a really difficult time and help them overcome a lot of their behavioral and emotional difficulties that they were experiencing when they first went into kinship care. Now, as many of us know, the biggest barriers to accessing support services can be financial, and that comes from all sides. From the side of the service providers, financing can be a barrier to providing adequate services. And on the carer side, not having the financial means to fully support yourself and the children that you've taken into your care can be a great stress, both practically and emotionally. So some of the first financial and legal needs that a kinship carer will have when they are new to their situation is understanding exactly what kind of carer they are and what support is there for them. Now, many carers enter into a more informal arrangement at first, and so they're not sure if they're even entitled to any support from their local authority. They may be entitled to child benefit, tax credits, kinship care allowance. There are lots of different terms out there. They all sound very similar and confusing, and making sure that those of us who are supporting carers can help them navigate these tricky waters is really important. Now, aside from that element, there's also just the real basics when you take on the care of another's child, such as paying for food, their clothes, getting their bedroom ready, school supplies, toys, everything that the child might need. There's no guarantee when these children enter care that they're coming with any of their possessions from their own home. So many carers have to start from scratch, and as Francis described, they often have to do it in a very short space of time. So again, Francis acknowledged that she and her husband were in a really strong position financially to be able to use their savings to help cover the shortfall between when they took on the children and when the 5 months later the financial support started coming through. Not everyone is in this position, so helping carers overcome those gaps and make sure that everything is covered and is working is again really crucial. And that last point, I also want to stress as well that self-care is beyond important when you're taking care of another, and especially when that child is coming from potentially really difficult and complicated circumstances, you're probably going to have to, shoulder a lot more stress and burden than a child who hasn't come from traumatic or stressful circumstances. So making sure that carers are supporting themselves is again invaluable to making sure that the family can thrive as a whole. Now, there are lots of different types of support out there. Some vary by region. It can be easy in some areas to access certain types of support and really difficult to access others. Some areas really don't provide or don't advertise the kinds of support they offer to kinship carers, or as Francis said in her story, they're often marketed at an older kinship care audience. So if you don't fall into that bracket, you might feel like there isn't the support out there for you. A bit of support, maybe from a family support worker or a local charity, we can help carers access the support that they need to feel comfortable and confident to move forward with their care arrangement. So whether that's one-to-one support, a peer support group, couples therapy, or family group counselling, to drop-in sessions or respite for carers, and educational groups, again, for carers or for children, things that can help strengthen those friendships and those peer group bonds that can get through some of the more specific challenges of their situation. I'm just going to outline a couple of resources that we often recommend for our kinship carers. So this first one is the Kinship Care Guide for England. We worked with Grandparents Plus on the first edition of this kinship care guide. They've now released a second edition, which is a wonderful resource for kinship carers. It's been written with the help of carers themselves, And it's also a really useful tool for social workers. So if you are accessing services and they don't have the information that you need, perhaps you can signpost them to this resource. Mentor has also produced a specific alcohol and drugs guide for kinship carers, which, again, written with the help of kinship carers, offers advice and information to carers based on their own experiences of bringing in children into care who've come from a background where there's parental alcohol and drug misuse. This resource and other information can be found on our website as well, the link for which is on our social media channels and also at the end of this presentation. We also released a specific kinship care guide for carers in Scotland. And this was published first in 2009. And again, this year, the third edition has become available. And it's so quickly became a vital resource for both carers and the service providers that were working with these families. And it goes through the responsibilities, legal rights, financial rights, and support for carers in Scotland, which, as Frances mentioned, can be slightly different from area to area and is also different between Scotland and England. So this resource offers step-by-step guidance on each of the various processes, from saying you're going to take on the care of a child to having that child in your home. Other resources and advice and information can be found in lots of different places. Here we've got a huge list covering a range of issues. We've got organisations such as Grandparents Plus, who specifically work with grandparents and other family carers, and other kinship care organisations such as the Fostering Network, Family Rights Group, Family Lives, Citizens Advice, and the Quorum Legal Centre both offer really great advice on that more practical and legal side. And then we've also got a couple of different websites here that provide specific support for families affected by substance misuse. So AdFam and AdAction, both of those work with families affected by addiction. From Mentor, you can get prevention and advice for how to talk to your child about drugs and alcohol. And resources such as Frank and Why Not Find Out can provide you with relevant, judgment-free information about drugs if you are curious or concerned about the substances that your child or children may have come into contact with. So we've got a huge range there. I can't go through each one of them individually, but each one of them provides really great resources for parents, carers, and kinship carers. So for more information about Kinship Care Week and what we've got going on the rest of this week, visit mentoruk.org.uk/Kinship Care Week. You can also go onto Twitter or Google+ or Facebook, and you can find us there. We're also sharing all of our information, resources, Kinship Care Week. And again, just one final reminder to BBC Radio 4 this Sunday. Our charity appeal will be presented at 7:54 in the morning and 9:26 p.m. If you're not able to listen live at those times, it will be available on the website. You can also find a direct link to our campaign on our Twitter channel throughout the week, and we will make sure to do so again throughout the weekend as well. So without further ado, I'm going to stop sharing my screen, and I'm going to go back to the Hangout page, where if there's anyone else with any questions, I will do my best to answer them, and if not, I will end the webinar. All right, well, that is so far it from me. I'm just going to double check that there are no questions on Twitter or anywhere else. Looks like we've got no questions. So with that, I'm going to close off this webinar. Thank you all for joining me. And again, if you have any questions, just share them using the hashtag Kinship Care Week. Thank you.